Well, hello everybody. Pastor Randy here. Welcome to Making It Simple. It is our Friday edition. I hope that you've had a great week. I certainly have. It's been extraordinarily busy, but in a good way. I am not complaining. Every day that we get up is a blessing. Sometimes those days are a little slower than others, but regardless, if we're able to breathe, if we're able to get up, I fully embrace that God still has a purpose for us to be here. And I am beyond grateful that I do what I do and that I'm able to do what I do. When I look back over my life, where I'm at right now, I could have never dreamed. And I don't say that from some elevated attitude or some high level of accomplishment, but more so the honor that I have to serve God. I would have never dreamed of that as a young person or as a young police officer on the road or any of the things that I've done in this life. I could have never imagined ending up where I'm at right now, and it's a good place to be. I am honored and humble before the Lord that I'm allowed to do what I do. We started yesterday the final part of the series in Storms Never Last. We looked in particular at Daniel chapter 6, which is the story that we've all heard, Daniel in the lion's den. I read that to you yesterday specifically in totality from verse 1 to verse 28. I tried to do it in a very passionate way because I wanted to point out all the different things that maybe we don't grasp from the children's story part. I want us to look today as we examine not only that account, but I want us to look today at the storm of when others are against us. We seem to be in the midst of that storm today in the world if we are people of faith, because that is not conducive to the ways of the world as it is right now, because the enemy is doing everything possible to create chaos and division. A person of faith stands out in that. A person of faith does not waver. A person of faith says, much like Daniel, I hear what you're saying, but I'm opening the window and I'm still going to pray because I know that God is the only answer. Rejection is one of those things that from the time we're little, we don't care for. We don't embrace well because it leaves us. It's such an emotional feeling that it is just overwhelming when we feel like we're not allowed to be a part of the team, or when someone says, "I don't want you around." Again, it doesn't matter what it is. It can be a relationship. It could be being turned down for a job. Again, when we're little, it wasn't getting picked for the team at recess whenever they were going to have, whatever the game was at. It doesn't matter the situation. Rejection never feels good. Never. However, what we have to determine, what we have to understand is, what am I being rejected from? And is that actually a blessing rather than something negative? Because it could be that we didn't get involved in something that turns out to be, that's a good thing. I can attest to that. Something within this the last year, I'm glad that I got rejected. I'm glad that I'm no longer a part of just lies and chicanery and foolishness. That happens sometimes in life, that we initially take the rejection as a hurt, as a pain, only to look back on it and see it as an actual blessing that God stepped in and said, yeah, I don't want you to be a part of that. That's not good for you, and it's not good for your witness. When we face peers, those around us, friends, family, whatever the case, and they have no desire to fellowship or converse, that feeling of rejection is a little stronger, because that's not just a common, Joe Blow down the street. This is someone that actually, their voice matters, their attitude matters. We can find all types of emotions coming out of this: alone, depressed, angry, all of this. And it can create, indeed, a storm in our life because we start asking all the questions. Why? What did I do wrong? Why wouldn't they want me? Where do I go from here? Where do I turn? What's wrong? Again, we can get in this emotional battle, which is real. I'm not making light of that at all. It is very real. But what we have to understand is, where are we going? Because our faith journey is never, the finish line is never whether we got to be class president or whether we were the most elected, the most popular in our senior yearbook. That should not be our life goal. It's nothing wrong with being liked. There's nothing wrong with being, applauded for if we've done a good job. But our ultimate goal is to please God. And the only way that we can do that is through faith, according to Scripture. It says, without faith, we cannot please God. See, emotions, they drive us all kinds of different directions. But if our faith is in the right place and in the right direction and in the right condition, it should always draw us closer to God. That's what I want us to look at today when we look back at what we spent time with yesterday in this very familiar story. Again, familiar because most have been introduced to this story at some point in time in their life, regardless of where they are today in their life of belief or non-belief or whatever. Most have heard the story of Daniel in the lion's den. It's a very popular children's version of a book. It's been retold and told and told and told 1,000 times. I want us to look at this, though, ever so differently. I want us to look at this story from the strong faith component, the power of prayer, the willingness to stand, and I mean literally stand, albeit on your knees, but stand for what you believe in and not bow to the world. You see, friends, compromise is not as simplistic as you have 3 different options for dinner and you settle for something because it may or may not be what you want, but you'll be fed. So, that we can use that as a form of compromise. However, when that rolls over into our spiritual life, our faith life, what we truly say that we believe and stand for, there's no room for compromise, because when we begin that, it starts a slippery slope. We've seen this, I've seen this myself within the confines of the church as it pertains to the organization, the organism, if you will, not the entire body, but maybe that too. Over the years, well, a little bit of this won't hurt, a little bit of that won't hurt. But here's the thing, it's just like cooking. A little bit of salt and a little bit of flavor helps enhance the item that's being cooked, if it calls for that. But if you put too much, it ruins it. It's not palatable because it doesn't taste good. It doesn't work. So therefore, not only has it ruined the meal, you're hungry, and this is really not good for anything. It needs to be thrown away. Compromise is a very dangerous road when it comes to our faith life. Here we see Daniel presented with the opportunity. I can avoid conflict. I can avoid issue. I mean, I'm a big deal. I'm in a high position here, and I don't have to worry about. I can just go along, and I don't have to worry about disrupting anything. Or I'm going to stand on my principles and let the cards fall where they will. We don't see that a lot anymore today. And those who do, those who do stand on their principles, those who do stand for what they believe, whether they're labeled as nuts and conspiracy theorists and rebels and all the words that can be thrown at someone because, well, they wouldn't bend, they wouldn't bow. Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, it tells us they wouldn't do that either. And it tells us they were tossed into the fire. But they came out of that fire and they didn't even smell like smoke. Why? Because they trusted God. Daniel, we're told, was tossed into the lion's den with a ravenous animal that could just tear him to shreds in just a mere moments, as what happened to those who accused him. He ended up using them for a pillow. See, friends, when we look at the faith component of this story, it becomes so much more important, so much deeper than just the cutesy children's version. Again, and I'm not taking away from that. I've read that story to my kids. It's a wonderful account. But I want us to see this from the stronger side. I want us to see this from the importance of standing for what you say you believe. And there's no middle ground. There's no gray area. Daniel heard the proclamation that came down from his accusers that they convinced the king to sign. He had a choice. Daniel went home and opened the window and continued to pray. He didn't bow down to the world. Because the world, again, I'm an old song guy, the world didn't give him his joy. God did. So he wasn't going to let the world take it away. The world could do whatever the world had to do. In this particular case, the king's decree or his peers' lies, the ones that had come against him. He didn't care. And it wasn't because he didn't care. But remember, well, when we started back in the Power series, the power of a carefree mind. I know God's got it, so I'm not going to worry about it. Worry for nothing. Be anxious for nothing. It all ties together. Daniel is part of many different things that is mentioned in the Bible, and it's a beautiful, beautiful thing. But in this particular case, we see he has stood out because of his character. He has stood out in the eyes of his fellows, those around him, because of his wisdom, his dependability. And we're told right from the get-go that King Darius has appointed him to a very high position in the cabinet. And almost immediately, we see a spirit of jealousy. We see a spirit of rejection. We don't want him. He can't be here. I mean, he's not one of those he's not gonna kiss up to the top. He's not gonna, no, he's the real deal. And so he's gonna make it harder on us. He's gonna make us look bad. That was the attitude. That's what was there. The spirit of jealousy, the spirit of rejection from his fellow cabinet members. And almost immediately they began to plot against him. They met together, secretly behind the back, those Judas meetings, I like to call them, in the rooms where nobody's around. We see the king, we're told he saw an excellent spirit in Daniel. I like that. This is important because as believers, as representatives of the Lord, our joy, our faith, our gratitude, it should be visible. It should be seen. It should be real. Others should be able to see our hearts. This does not make us not human anymore. We're going to have days that aren't great. We're not telling you every day you're out whistling and just that there's never any rain, there's never any thunder, there's never any storms, because that's not true. Life happens. But what is our faith placed in? Something or someone? The ways of the world or the ways of God? Which one will be there when it's all over? Which one will stand when the storm comes? Because I assure you, one will fall, one will not. Which one are we going to place our faith in? That's what it comes down to. That is, as the old saying would say, the bottom line. People should be able to know who we really are. That's what the king saw in Daniel. He saw that Daniel was the real deal. They should be able to see our motives. They should be able to see our true desires. That should never be a character. That should never be distorted in any way. Because, see, just as someone who's dishonest, someone who is a snake oil salesman, someone who is a charlatan, it doesn't take long to pick up on that if you open your eyes. It's very, very clear, very easy to see. Just as someone who's real, someone who's sincere. You can see it. The Bible uses the word countenance, which just means expression. That's what's on your face. That's what you can see, because you can tell by expressions on someone's face. You can tell happiness, you can tell sadness, you can tell pain, you can tell anguish. I mean, you can see so many things. It says the windows are the eyes to the soul. You can see that. You can see whether something's real or whether it's not. The king saw this in Daniel. He saw it. It was clear, and he realized he could count on him. He could say, Daniel is my guy. No question about it. But others around him didn't like that. Why? Because they assumed, because of that, Daniel would get more attention. It's childlike. It's childlike. I mean, it is the proverbial playpen. You put 5 kids in there and you pay one a little bit more attention than the other. You give one an extra cookie. You give whatever the case. The other ones aren't going to like that. That's our nature. That's just what's there. It's a competitive spirit that we kind of start off with. In this particular case, though, when that's born out of a spirit of jealousy, spirit of whatever, it can get dangerous. It can get ugly because we see it all the time. Well, so-and-so is going to get something now. I don't want them to have it. Or so-and-so is going to get a little bit more attention or a little bit more this or that. I don't want that because I want what they're going to have. And so rather than work hard and accomplish the same thing, because it's not that the opportunity is not going to be there, you want to take it away from someone else. That's the world that we see today all the time. There again, where are we going to place our faith? What are we going to place our faith in? They didn't like the fact that Daniel was in this elevated position. They didn't like it at all. And as history has proven, and it continues to prove every day, people of faith, and I mean people of deep conviction that are going to stand for what they say they're going to stand. They're not going to bend. They're not going to bow. They're not always popular. These guys around Daniel, they saw him as, okay, we're not going to be able to get him out of the way because the king believes in him. The king trusts him. And yeah, that's probably going to keep us on the outside. Rather than go to Daniel and say, how do we come to the same faith that you have? How do we come to this same relationship with the living God that you have? How can we have that? Rather than that, no. They want to plot. They want to scheme. They want to plan to take it away. Rejection, jealousy, competitive spirits. They often come into play in matters like this, and it hasn't changed a couple thousand years later. And in the process of that, oftentimes a tremendous storm can come. The storm of when others are against us. In this series of Storms Never Last, I've made it clear, and I believe this because I live this. I've been in, oh my goodness, countless storms in this life. Many of them were my fault. I'm not taking any. I'm not taking any less heat off of that. I've been my worst enemy for 54 years. I mean that's yeah. But regardless of the storm, regardless of the cause, regardless of the type, storms never last. But I'll stop with this today, and this is what I want us to think on as we go into the weekend, and we'll pick back up on this on Monday, Lord willing. Storms never last. However, the ending, the ending is most often determined by how willing we are to let go. Think about that. How willing are you to let go of the storm that you're in and let God take you by the hand to somewhere so much better? God bless you. I'm really excited about this lesson, friends. This story is one that compels me. Another that comes to mind, and maybe we can do this in one of our next series, is the life of Jonah. The story that's there is amazing. It is so much more than just the children's story of Jonah being swallowed by the whale. There's unbelievable. Maybe we'll do that one too. But this story of Daniel in the lion's den is so much broader than we've ever really considered, because mostly we've only been exposed to the children's book. I hope this is going to be a blessing to you. I'm very excited to teach it. Remember this, again, the storm that you're in, it won't last. It won't. It will come to an end. But the way that it ends is going to very, very much be how willing you are to let it go. God bless you. I'll see you Monday. Have a great weekend.